Okay, we're going to get started. Hello and welcome everyone to Omnichannel Ecommerce Explained. This is presented by BigCommerce, Fortuitas, and SalesLayer. My name is Jack Kurtz. I'm the CEO and founder of Fortuitas. And joining me today are Patrick Williams, Senior Partner Solutions Engineer from BigCommerce, and Chris Johnson, Senior Solution Advisor from SalesLayer. Good to have you guys here today.
Yeah, good to be here.
All right. So before we get started, we do have a couple more people that are coming in, so I'm just letting them in now. I just wanted to remind everybody, if you could please remain on mute and keep your video off for the duration of the presentation, just so we can get through all of the material. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them through the chat in your control panel. And when we get to the questions section, we'll be happy to address any questions that you have. So with that, I think we'll get started here. I'm going to jump into the agenda. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about something that I refer to as the retail apocalypse, and also talk about some buying trends in the e-commerce space. And then we'll get directly right into what is omnichannel. That's really why we're all here today. Chris will talk about what is a PIM, which is an important component of an omnichannel solution. And then Patrick will talk about what is BOPIS. Here we have another acronym, and he'll talk about BOPIS's role in the omnichannel ecosystem. And then we'll talk about what is next, what we're going to do after we're done with this webinar. We have some other things for you. And as I said, we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A. Again, please feel free to enter any of your questions in the chat. So let's get right into it here. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is the retail apocalypse. So you may not have known this, but we were already facing what some of us refer to as a retail apocalypse prior to COVID-19, prior to 2020. And really, traditional brick and mortar retail was already on the decline before the pandemic. We saw, certainly in the US, but I know in other countries as well, we saw a lot of retailers closing their doors. So some of the brands that I'm going to mention are more in the United States, but you may be familiar with some of them overseas in other countries. Payless Shoe Source was one of them. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in February of 2019, and they closed all of their 2,100 US stores. And then we also had Gymboree. They closed 800 of their stores. And also, who else do we have here? Sears. So Sears and Kmart. They own both of those brands. And they closed 1,300 Kmart and Sears stores since 2013. In 2019 alone, they shut an additional 80 locations. And there were a number of other retailers as well. The Gap, Pier 1 Imports, Radio Shack, and Toys R Us. Those brands pretty much went out of business completely. And some of them have reemerged with e-commerce only, but I think they're really struggling. And what a lot of these brands have all had in common is, well, a number of things. First, their in-store retail experience was not very engaging. It was very outdated, very boring, actually. And then also their website and their e-commerce site just wasn't really measuring up to modern day standards. And they had to compete with Amazon. And then the third thing is that most of them did not adopt omnichannel. And that's what we're really here to talk about today. So we don't want to see any other retailers face this situation. So if you can embrace this omnichannel concept, you have a much better chance of success and certainly surviving and thriving. So let's talk a little bit about some e-commerce trends. So this chart comes from a very reputable source, eMarketer. So back in 2015, e-commerce represented 7.4% of global retail sales. And in late 2019, early 2020, before the pandemic, they projected that e-commerce would represent 16.1% of total global retail sales. I think that was a conservative estimate, and there was no way they could have foreseen the excuse me, the COVID-19 pandemic. So I actually think these numbers the final numbers will end up being a bit higher. And they projected by 2023 that e-commerce would represent 22% of total global retail sales. So I guess the point here is if you were already involved in e-commerce prior to last year, you were definitely heading in the right direction. If you found yourself caught by surprise when COVID-19 came and you had to pivot and adopt e-commerce, well, that was probably very difficult, a very difficult transition to make. And some of you may not have even made that transition yet. But regardless, if you choose to make that transition, you'll see that the projection for the future is very promising. E-commerce is really a great place to be. And omnichannel is certainly a way to go if you want to be successful ultimately. So let's talk about what is omnichannel. And before I specifically talk about what is omnichannel, I want to talk a little bit about what omnichannel is not. So omnichannel is not multi-channel. So multi means many, so many sales channels. Omni means all sales channels. So here in this diagram, you'll see a consumer that's interacting with a brand that has a retail store, website, mobile application, social media channels, and a call center. And in this type of multi-channel environment, all of the processes are different. The systems are different. The data is not coming from the same source. So the product data, the inventory, and the pricing could all be coming from different sources. The people managing all of these different channels might be different people. So they're not working together as a team, and that can create a very frustrating customer experience. So for example, we have a client and they have an e-commerce store online, and they also have an Amazon channel. And one of their customers purchased a product on Amazon. And after they purchased the product, they went on the company's website and they saw that same product, but the description was different. And they got upset because one of the components in the description was different on the website, and they were concerned that they did not buy the right product. And that's because this particular company is more operating in a multi-channel environment. So again, the key is the processes, the systems, the data, and the people all working in unison. So let's compare that to omnichannel. Again, omni meaning all, and this is where all the channels are working together in harmony, sharing the same processes, sharing the same systems, the same people working together as a team. The data, including the product inventory and pricing data, is all shared among all of these different channels. And so the customer is going to have a much more cohesive, unified experience, whether they buy on the web or whether they buy in the retail store or from any other channel. And so that really is the concept of omnichannel. And so one of the important components of omnichannel, I'm going to actually hand that off to Chris, and he's going to talk about what is a PIM. So Chris?
Very good. Thank you very much for that introduction. And yeah, PIM stands for Product Information Management System. What does this have to do with an omni-channel? Well, obviously, Jack mentioned it a little bit. He was talking about this customer that went to a multi-channel and was not finding coherent or consistent data. But having all your content on a product information management system is going to allow it's the first step to move to omni-channel. And how we're going to do this? Well, we're going to call them the three pillars. If we go to the next slide, we'll talk about how we're starting with organize. This is the first pillar. And Sometimes we ask our customers, where do you host your data? For example, where you host your images, where you host your translations, where do you host your descriptions, stuff like that, like maybe pricing and currencies and stuff like that. Where do you host them? Well, people may answer, well, I have them in my Drive, I have them in, for example, Excel sheets, I have them some data in the ERP, so on and so forth. And if these are being connected to some of your channels, then yes, you may be feeding them to your multi-channels, to your different channels, like we were talking about physical stores, we were talking about our sites, we were talking about all these different selling channels. But the problem is that they may not be consistent. So that's why we begin, or we start with the second phase, or the second pillar, that we call analyze. If we try to scratch out or reduce to the max all these different sources of information and host them in one true source, maybe online, if it's possible, online, right? Different departments accessing the tool, different, with maybe different permissions, different views according to the person that's accessing this database, let's call it. Remember, it's the product information management system. Now you can have tools to analyze, to enrich, to make all the data not only consistent, but to be correct. Then we move to the third pillar, to what we call connect. So we have only one source of information, and now we're going to connect it to all our selling channels. It can be online, it can be our site, it can be the e-commerce, other marketplaces, your, for example, your social media feed, maybe an app, or to distributors. Maybe create paper catalogs, maybe even create an intranet, or some type of internal source of information. So when you have all this installed in your company, now you are going towards omni-channel. So moving on,
All right.
did you know, did you know that 25% of abandoned shopping carts are related to insufficient product information? That means if you have 4 customers and one of them left, most likely it's because your product wasn't correctly enriched. You didn't have enough product information. So having a PIM installed will help you have your product information properly fulfilled. Right, Jack?
Yes, sir. Great. Thank you, Chris. So, Patrick, tell us about this next topic. What is BOPIS, this crazy acronym?
Of
we
course,
see?
yeah. What a fun acronym to say, right? BOPIS.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, BOPIS from BigCommerce's perspective is really one of the fastest growing omni-channel destinations that we've seen this year. If you're not familiar with BOPIS, it stands for, buy online, pick up in store, and is basically, the functionality to go shop on an e-commerce site. And instead of saying, hey, ship this to my house, I'll say, hey, I'm going to go pick this up at one of the nearby, brick and mortar locations of the brand. I know we have a lot of international folks on the line, and I'd love to actually know the story of how we came up with 2 different terms around the world for something so new. But it's really only referred to as BOPIS, or buy online, pick up in store, in North American markets, from what I've seen. The rest of the world refers to the same functionality as click and collect. So again, totally interchangeable terms, no difference in functionality. Maybe BOPIS is a little bit more fun to say, like I said. So if you think about the challenge behind BOPIS, if you've ever tried to actually facilitate that on an e-commerce platform before, you know that the real crux of being able to do that well is the inventory management piece, right? If I have really simple setup where all my inventory is in a single place, I store everything at my single brick and mortar retail location, this would become a lot easier. But that's almost never the case, right? We're going to have warehouses, we're going to have multiple brick and mortar locations, and understanding where that inventory is, and even, possibly having internal fulfillment mechanisms to move inventory between those different locations is really critical. So from BigCommerce's perspective, we can facilitate this in a few different ways today. If you do have one of those less sophisticated setups where you just have a single location that you're fulfilling from, we can actually facilitate that right out of the box with something called offline shipping methods. If you do have that more traditional setup where you have the multiple locations and we need to worry about the inventory management, that does require some third-party system that is inventory location aware today, but that can be integrated into the BigCommerce storefronts, and we have lots of merchants doing BOPIS or click and collect in different markets today. And then looking forward, this year, we're actually working hard right now to build and release multi-location inventory natively into the platform. So later this year, BigCommerce itself will actually be able to hold that structured data and understand my various retail locations, my various warehouses, and kind of how my inventory is broken up between those. So just to round out some interesting stats here about BOPIS over the last year. So, BOPIS actually increased 195% year over year in May since the pandemic. Over 40% of shoppers over this last holiday season used buy online, pick up in store. Pretty surprising. And this one I think is super interesting, right? So 68% of shoppers, or I'm sorry, I wanted to talk about the next one. I thought I misread here. But yeah, 68% of shoppers actually made multiple BOPIS purchases this year. And then the one that I think is really interesting is that almost half of shoppers have used BOPIS to counter their shipping fees, right? So I think we always think about buy online, pick up in store is that, I need it right now. I want to drive out today and go pick it up in the store. But a lot of shoppers are actually looking at, that $7 ship to my home fee and getting, not being certain they want to convert anymore. And when they see that buy online, pick up in store option, that's actually, giving them more confidence to go and actually finalize checkout. So.
All right, great. Thanks, Patrick.
Of course.
So just so everyone knows, this is actually a two-part webinar series. Today is part one. We're going to be presenting part two on Thursday. And if you haven't signed up, we definitely encourage you to do so. This is called How to Set Up Your Omnichannel E-commerce Strategy. And that's where we're actually going to be giving a demo of the sales layer PIM with BigCommerce, setting up your catalog, and then publishing your catalog out to multiple sales channels. So that's going to be very exciting. I have my colleague, Johnny Gregory, in the background here. I think he's going to put this URL in the chat, this tiny URL. Please, I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, sign up for this part two. And just to further incentivize you to join us, we are going to be giving away to one lucky attendee on Thursday a Blue Yeti microphone. That's the actual microphone that I am using here. So, well, not the actual one. We'll send you a brand new one in a box, but it's the identical model. So you'll definitely want to see if you can show up and hopefully win a Blue Yeti microphone. So again, hope to see everybody on Thursday. Please go ahead and sign up. And what we'd like to do right now is take some questions. So let me see what we have here in the chat. I've got, okay, so here we go. This is a good one. So I think this will be an interesting conversation between Chris and Patrick and myself. So the question is, when or why do I need a PIM? Like, can I just do this without a PIM? So we've actually talked about this a little bit, Chris and Patrick. So this will be interesting. Chris, well, you're from SalesLayer, the creator of our favorite PIM. So why don't you share your perspective on that one?
Well, answering the question, can I do this without a PIM? Sure, why not? If you live in the 1800s, if you want to kill yourself, if you want to spend all your time doing this, then yeah, sure, you can do it without a PIM. But I would suggest you would love to spend some time with your family and allow the software to do the dirty job. Let's say no, but really now, talking seriously, whenever you need, whenever we're talking a number of SKUs. It doesn't have to be a specific number, but whenever it takes more time than you would expect or that you would love to invest in this, due maybe to the variations of your products, due to the amount of data that you have per product, or maybe due to translations, different aspects of the actual products can make it hard not only to maintain or keep up on a database, but also to the multiple connecting or selling channels. That can also be a challenge. So it's not something I would say almost anybody that wants to sell online should consider having a PIM installed. And I like something that you mentioned the other day when we were having a conversation. I don't know, Jack. You said something about 30 minutes per SKU or something like that. What was it?
Oh, yeah. This is a formula that we like to talk about here at Fortuitas. So, for example, let's say that it takes you about 30 minutes to enter your product data into one of your sales channels. So you have to put your image in there, make sure it's formatted properly, all your product description. You got to put your pricing in there. Then you have to publish it, and then you have to check it. And okay, that's great. Well, then that's probably about 30 minutes. Maybe it's an hour if you're really spending time formatting your image. Well, then you need it for that same product. You need to go to your other sales channel. Okay, so that's right there. Let's say that's 30 minutes. That's an hour, 2 hours for one product. So what happens when you have 20 products? So now that's 20 hours or 40 hours. And that's just for 2 channels. Well, what if you have 100 products? What if you have 4 channels? What if you have 1,000 products? So every time you need to enter a new product or anytime you need to edit the information of a new product, that's wasted time. I'd rather personally do it just once myself. I mean, even if I had 20 products in my catalog, I would do it that way. Some people think, well, maybe until you have a lot of products, like 1,000 products, it makes sense. We've seen it be much more efficient, even with just a small number of products. But we've had clients that have put 8 million products into a PIM. There's absolutely no way I would want to do that without a PIM, especially if I had multiple sales channels. I just couldn't see doing it.
Definitely. And allow me to share just one last phrase. My buddy Kyle says, it's not how your company is structured now. It's where you want to go and how you vision your company in a couple of years. Because if you start out with a solid basis, installing a PIM from the beginning, then to replicate or to increase your SKU count or to increase your selling channels, it's just by clicks, click, click, and it'll take no time. So better start now than in the middle of the construction of the building.
Makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
the only thing I'd add, I thought that was great, guys, and I think you hit on most of the stuff I would touch on. The only other thing I see pretty frequently is the workflow between the teams that actually input that product information, right? So as that gets more sophisticated, if we need to hand off to other teams or third-party photographers or things like that to actually get all that data in place, I've seen a lot of merchants move towards PIM for some of that reason. To Jack and Chris's point, even if they don't have a million SKU catalog or something like that.
Yeah. Well, since you're speaking, Patrick, this is a good one for you. Can my e-commerce store function as my inventory management system? You were talking about inventory management earlier. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so again, I mean, BigCommerce, from our perspective, I mean, we come with everything you need out of the box to run a functioning e-commerce site, and so that does include some light product information management. Like the question we were just talking about, though, I mean, we do see a lot of merchants start looking to third-party PIM solutions, especially as they move up in SKU count. We support a lot of B2B merchants that have a lot of sophisticated products, right? So as I start having hundreds of options and option values against my products, it starts to make a lot more sense. So we do have some native omni-channel and some native PIM functionality in BigCommerce, but like I said, especially in upper mid-market and enterprise, we pretty typically see people start using best in breed third-party solutions.
What about inventory though? Like, for example, some people have their own inventory management system. They have an ERP, like Acumatica is one that we like. Um, can they start out using BigCommerce as their inventory management system? Is that something that would make sense? And when would it not make sense? I think we've had this conversation. So
Yeah, so I mean, we talked a little bit about this on the BOPIS piece. I mean, you know, we do understand, we can hold and understand your inventory information today, but we do lack that multi piece. So if your inventory is spread out across multiple locations, that's something that does require a third party today, and that's, you know, typically kind of a you know, when we would absolutely recommend that you need a PIM if you did have some of those, or I'm sorry, an inventory management system if you did have some of those requirements.
great. Okay. So here's a good one. What are some of the fastest growing sales channels you're seeing with Omnichannel? And what are the most common ones? So I think it's a two-part question, really. There's the up and coming and the most common. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about BOPIS and click and collect from like a demand perspective. I think that's definitely near the top, especially for the upper mid market and enterprise merchants that are with us. We're also starting to see a lot more niche omni-channel locations, right? So we've all for a long time, you know, been helping merchants sell on Facebook, sell on Amazon, which we still see a lot of demand for. But now we're starting to see channels like, you know, wish.com, like alibaba.com, or even, you know, regional marketplace channels that are important to different merchants in different countries and different locales. So that's, I'd say those niche markets has been kind of the biggest growth we've seen. And then, I mean, you know, we still see a ton of demand for people trying to connect to, like we said, Amazon, Facebook and Instagram shops, you know, Google Shopping and kind of the standard, you know, things you think of when you first think of omnichannel. So.
Nice. Chris, so you're in Spain and you deal a lot with European markets. You also deal South America, Mexico, Asia Pacific, Australia, a lot of different countries. What are you seeing internationally?
Yeah, I was gonna I was gonna mention that just as Patrick said, we're locating a need for regional connections, right? Apart from BigCommerce that they're expanding in APAC, they're expanding in Latin America and Europe, and we are hand to hand with them because it is true that we have one of the best connections from a PIM to BigCommerce. So whenever we're in a call and we say, hey, we got a native connector to BigCommerce, their eyes are like, oh, that's marvelous. But it is true that in the US, we are finding people that want to connect to Walmart, for example. Then we have people in Europe that want to connect to GS1 or to their local GS1. So it is true that there's starting to be like this trend for specific and regional. I like that what Patrick said, the regional connection has some power. But the good thing or the good news is that on Thursday we'll show you exactly how to connect to these let's call them regional or whatever connection you would need, because it's by just simply configuring the API or the open connection that we have, that you can connect it to virtually anything you may need. So yeah, that's a good question, and you'll see it on Thursday.
Great. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions here, but if anybody does have additional questions, please feel free to shoot us an email at info@fortuitas.com. You can also call our US number here if you'd like, and we're happy to answer any additional questions that you have. But before we go, I just want to mention one more time, this Thursday is really where the action is going to be. And as Chris mentioned, the demo of Sales Layer and BigCommerce and this omni-channel experience. That's something you definitely don't want to miss. It's going to be very exciting. So hope to see you all there. So I guess that's it. Chris, Patrick, really want to thank you guys. Great being with you today.
Yeah, it was excellent. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
And I
pleasure.
want to thank everybody. We have people from all over the globe that attended today, and we are going to be posting a replay of this webinar on our website. An email is going to go out along with a reminder invite to this part 2. So once again, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great day, a great evening, and adios and gracias to you as well. I just saw somebody send a nice message. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
See ya.